to you. If you take away the porn, for most men, myself included, I don't have that good of a visual memory. Like, I can't bring up in my head all of those porn images. So if I stop looking at porn within a month or so, masturbation is just not going to be that interesting. If I did or didn't do it, it's not a big deal because I'm not masturbating to that continuous rolling, hyper stimulating set of images that the porn brings. So without scaring you or without you doing anything without talking to your sponsor, I just want to say to you that if I were you, I would be less worried about masturbation and more worried about the porn. However, there are people who have really very, very vivid visual imaginations. I'm not one of them, but there are some creative people who they can think in visuals. And for those people, they can bring up all the porn in their head. And they don't need the computer screen or the phone to be looking at the porn. They can look at it in their head. So if you know yourself to be someone who can replay porn in your head and watch it and get turned on by it and be in it, then probably masturbation altogether is not a great idea for you because you might get caught up in that loop of, as you said, intense stimulation to fantasy, and then you lose touch with people. But masturbation is a healthy part of being a human being. So I would be concerned about your saying, I'm never going to masturbate again. I think that's something to really, let me tell you how I dealt with it with patients that I work with and also sponsees. And I'm not saying that you should do this, but I would say to someone, why don't you masturbate? See how that goes. No porn. See if within a couple of days or a month or a week you feel like it's changed how you are or driven you to go back to the porn, or if it had a negative effect, don't do it again. It's not a slip because you discussed it prior and you worked it out. This is the thing about sexual recovery, and maybe I need to explain this to everyone. We don't create a very rigid set of boundaries around which we live sexually forever. If we're in a marriage, we might, but if we're single, we might create one set of boundaries that's going to change until we're in a relationship, and then it's going to change again. So if masturbation to porn has been a huge problem for me, I might take away the masturbation to porn for a while, and then I might bring the masturbation back in, but without the porn. And if it's a problem, okay, it's a problem. But it's not like I did something wrong because I didn't just impulsively go start masturbating. I did what you're doing. And let me say what you're doing is the right thing. You're coming here and asking questions. I just suggest that you ask the same questions to the people who are in your life, who know your story. And if they say, I don't know if porn's a good idea for you, if masturbation is a good idea for you or not, I say, go try it. The worst thing will happen is you'll end up looking at porn again and someone will say, okay, definitely no masturbation for you, or it won't be a big deal, and that'll be one less big deal on the road to your recovery. Hopefully that's helpful.
I think that was a great answer. So my sex addict husband is having trouble getting a rhythm with so many daily recovery activities. Do you have any suggestions on how to prioritize the therapy, 12-step meeting, podcast, books, etc.?
Yeah, sure. One day at a time. I don't think that recovery is about doing all of it all the time. I don't think our healing is about doing, if I'm not reading a book, I'm in a meditation group. If I'm not in a meditation group, I'm headed to a meeting. If I'm not at a meeting, maybe in very early recovery, you need to really focus just on that. But if you're beginning to get some sense of sobriety, or if you're, if you're coming back from treatment and you're just trying to figure out life, it's equally important to live your life as it is to live your recovery. So, do a meditation in the morning, go to a meeting in the evening, great, that's one day. Another day you listen to a podcast on the way to work, and in the evening you do some journaling. In other words, it's integrated, not everything all the time, because that sounds a lot like addiction, but maybe a little bit each day. Your husband, or if you're here, the goal here is for you to find a rhythm or a pattern or a structure for yourself that incorporates this into your life as a part of your daily routine. So if you make it such a huge thing you have to do all the time, you're going to never follow it. It's like the guy who says, I'm going to quit smoking on New Year's, you have to just integrate some pieces in every single day. And if that's not enough, integrate an extra piece. And if it seems like too much, take one out. And, some days you may Just have a prayer in the morning. Other days you may go see a sponsee, go to therapy, but it doesn't have to be everything all the time. Here's a minimum requirement for you. I think someone in early recovery should be in touch with another person in recovery, someone from a meeting or a therapist or a 12-step person, or be in an environment like this once a day. It doesn't have to be go to a meeting, but at least a phone call, at least some chatting online. You should be in contact with another human being every day. And I think that alone will be very grounding for you and helpful. More than a book, more than anything else, just having people you're connecting with on a regular basis. That's my best advice.
Okay, here's one. If a man, my husband, I just discovered, has sex with the same sex man, oral, anal, periodically once a year or so, would that be considered that he is not straight? If there's a pattern to his behavior, will he ever stop? He says he loves women, that he doesn't find men romantically attractive, but nonetheless he goes for the same sex pleasure. And this person is all right with that. I just don't want to end up 10 years to be the wife whose husband comes home and says he's gay. So.
Well, a lot about answering that question for that person depends on how long they've been together and how old they are. Because I've had questions like that from 65-year-old women who've been married to a guy for 40 years. And I've had questions like that from a 23-year-old young woman who's just starting to date a guy, and he says he does this occasionally and she's not sure what to think of it. So, and I don't really, I want to be very cautious about not giving you some answer that's going to throw you off what's important to you. I will say this, there are bisexual men and women, and those people who are bisexual have a bit of a dilemma. It's true, and this is true. If you are truly bisexual, if you choose to be with a woman and that is how you spend your life, there will always be some part of you that feels a sense of loss. And if you are bisexual and you go and decide to be with a man and live your life with a man, when you watch that woman and that family walk by, there will always be a sense of loss. Because being bisexual truly means you're pulled in both directions, and there really are such people. Interestingly, such people, while they have a loss, they also have a gain, which means they have the opportunity to decide, maybe more than many of us, many of the rest of us, do I want to be with a woman or a man? They have a broader choice of people. But the challenge for them is that once they make that decision, they need to stick with it. So what am I trying to say to you here? My concern for you is nobody's attracted to someone once a year. Nobody goes and acts out once a year. My concern is, how meaningful is this to him? Like, I think you guys need to do a lot more talking about this. That's what I think. And with a professional. And I do want to say one more thing, just based on what you said. Many gay men have strong romantic and loving feelings for women, and sometimes are sexual with those women, but they are not necessarily interested in other women or having sex with other women. When it comes purely to sex, they just really like the male body, the male form. They want to have sex with men. And in that sense, they're homosexual men. They are turned on by men, but they have chosen to love this woman, and they love this woman in such a way that they don't want to leave her. They have a family with her, and they either will, A, stop having sex altogether that they enjoy with men and simply not be sexual outside of the relationship, or B, they're in some kind of arrangement or agreement with you as a spouse that they may go and do XYZ occasionally. But here's how those agreements work. You need to know every detail. This is something that needs to be discussed. You're talking about if your husband goes out occasionally with men. Basically, let's take the male part out of it. Your husband goes out occasionally and has sex with other people. There. Now that's an easier way to deal with it. So you have an open marriage. Is that open for you or for just him? And is it just for him because he likes men? And so you say, okay, well, when you want to go be with men, you can do that, but he can't be with women. So, and is that written and discussed? And the reason I say this to you is that people get into a lot of trouble making assumptions about relationships, and especially around sex. These are things I would want to have discussed. What is our agreement? If you're going to be with a man, how often? What are you going to do with him? What kind of sex are you going to have? Do I want to know about it or not know about it? Am I going to go out and be sexual with other people? These are all questions. And by the way, I'm not talking about sex addicts, because sex addicts tend to not do best in these kinds of open relationships for the most part. But if you're a heterosexual woman and you're married to a guy, I think you need to figure out what kind of relationship you want to have with him, or what kind of relationship you want to have. And then you also need to figure out, how invested is he in men? Is it, I like men, but I like women, or I love you and I love having sex with you, but other than you, I've never been with a woman, I'm not really interested in women. That says a lot. So when you say he's romantically not attracted to women, that means nothing to me. All that means to me is he's a man who has sex with men and is romantically involved with women because he doesn't want to necessarily deal with or look at the fact that he's attracted to men. Here's one more thought for you. I would feel more comfortable if I were you. If I was with this guy and he said, look, I've been with guys, I've spent a year living with one. In other words, if he was a guy who'd had a relationship with a man and he had combined sex and love with a man, and he'd combined sex and love with a woman, then I would say I would feel on safer ground if I were you. But if you're saying that this man splits romance over here and sex over there, so his primary sexual attraction or almost sole sexual attraction is to men, and his romantic attraction is simply to you in particular, and he likes having sex with you, then you're probably going to wake up 10 years from now and you're going to have a gay husband. Because the reality is if he's primarily attracted to men and you're the only woman he's really interested in, he loves you and he can be sexual with you because he has feelings for you. But that doesn't have anything to do with what he's sexually attracted to. And that will be a problem for you over time.
Okay. This one is from an unfaithful wife that thinks she might be a love addict. I've been faithful for 17 years, but fell in love with another man. I'm trying to stop the affair, but I believe I cannot stop contact. What should I do?
Well, again, I don't know you, and I don't know your circumstances, but I do want to say that if you have been faithful to someone for 17 years, you have not had sex with other people, you haven't been looking at porn regularly, you haven't been chatting up old boyfriends and masturbating to romance novels, and if you've really been focused on this relationship for 17 years, and then you find yourself really meaningful distracted by someone else, I don't think that's addiction. I mean, that's not addiction in my world. If you have a history of getting romantically obsessed with other people than your husband, and you finally found someone who, but this is a long line of men, that's a different story. But if you're telling me that you've loved and been involved and committed to this person for, forget 17 years, 10 or 12, and then you met someone else, that's a whole different set of circumstances. I mean, in a way, that's just kind of called cheating. And so I'm curious, and I'm not going to get to engage with you, but what's the need to put this label love addict or love addiction on it? Maybe you just found a guy and had an affair, emotional or sexual, and started to get needs met there, and he's all you can think about. That's what affairs are. Or maybe you've met the love of your life and you need to leave your husband. I don't know. I don't know your circumstances. But I caution using the word addiction when you have a crush on someone or you have a deep attraction to someone, but you don't have a history of walking emotionally or sexually out of your relationship over time. Maybe there's just something very powerful going on for you that you need to take a look at with this other person and with your relationship. That's the best I can do. I do want to make a little announcement though, Tammy, if you don't mind. I want to say to you guys that we do all of this for free, and I do all of this. There's no charge to any of you guys. I will ask one thing of you though. I would like your support in promoting the site. Sexandrelationshiphealing.com is where this work is being given away. I am working really hard to create drop-in groups and spouses groups and podcasts and blogs and all the stuff that you need to be able to recover without ever going to a treatment center, or maybe ever not even going to a therapist. I'm trying my hardest because I know so many of you want to heal and don't necessarily have access to every resource. So do me the favor, spread the word if you can. Go to Sex and Relationship Healing, bring a friend, bring a group, bring some people. That's how we get paid, is if people show up on the site. If we know that, and I'll explain it to you. If I want to start a spouses drop-in group, but I only have like 4 or 5 people there. That's not enough people for a group. I want to get 25 women in a group. I want to get 12 guys in a group. So really what I'm asking you is to help me support sex and relationship healing so that I can get enough people there for you to get the support you need. And yes, I am coming to you through there, but that's my little advertisement right in the middle there. More questions?
There's this one's, they're all good. So here's, this is from a guy. He said, I have been working through my sex and porn addiction for 4 years now. As we go through this as a gay couple, we find very much alone in the gay community. Cruise control and sex addiction 101 and countless hours of professional therapy and group therapy were all very helpful and profound to help us realize the extent of my behaviors and how the open relationship or sexual freedoms are celebrated in the gay community. What other resources, books, or organizations are available to us to help combat those negative beliefs in our gay communities?
It's a great question. The question I would have for you, and what limits me in answering, is where do you live? Because if you live in a very rural area without a lot of urban groups, if you live out in the middle of nowhere, it's going to be harder for you to get support. And let me explain what I mean by support. I think for gay couples who are used to going out and having a lot of sex, going out and partying, going out to the clubs, going out to the bar, that's your life. It's kind of a social life. You make friends that way. You have a life that way. There are people who reflect those values, and that fun, and that's great. But then if you leave that world, you still have to replace it. So just because you're not necessarily out there having sex with strangers or going out or living a lifestyle that involves a lot of promiscuity, there's still a whole gay world out there that you can engage with. There are hiking groups, there are theater groups, there are choirs, there are churches, there are temples. And I think the strongest suggestion I can give you as a couple is get involved with people who are doing other things in the community other than going to bars, going to clubs, going to the gym, and having sex. I live in a large urban area. I'm blessed. I can join a gay choir. I can go join a gay theater group. I can go to a gay painting class. I mean, I have a million opportunities. But guess what? We live in 2018. The internet is very busy. You can probably, if you really look for them, find support groups for gay couples to talk about issues and talk about that are online that aren't about sex. So I don't know if this is the right answer to your question because I'm not quite sure I have captured your question, but my best response to what I heard is that I think a lot of gay couples leave the world of the sex, the bars, all that stuff, and they get involved with each other, but then they don't re-enter the world of couples and activities and recreation that is open to them. And by the way, a few straight friends don't hurt either. You don't always only have to hang out with gay people. One of the great things about being a couple is now you're a couple and you can hang out with lots of couples, and couples are couples, boy couples, girl couples, boy girl couples, all kinds of couples. Start thinking of life like, here's another example of what might be helpful to you. Lower your expectations of what fun is. Think of fun as sitting around with a bunch of friends and playing cards. If that's your definition of fun, you're going to be fine. If that's not your definition of fun, lower your expectations of fun. Those of us, who live in the gay world when we're young and out in all of those glistening lights and all the drugs and all the music, and it seems like the party's going to go on forever. But when we settle down into adult life in the mature relationship, there's not a lot of glitter. This is real life. And it's wonderful, but it's not the same highs and lows. It's going to be gardening. It's going to be going on a trip with friends. It's a whole different level of fun and a whole different. So, I think leaving that world behind is really important, but there is a world you may have yet to embrace. And by the way, I know gay couples who go on cruises, and there are sober cruises. I mean, there's tons of things you can do as a couple. Get out there and do them.
I agree. It is about redefining what fun is. But I always remember the fun too. It's like I don't have to. No, there's no shame about that stuff. So, okay.
Oh, I don't mind. Yeah, you don't have to forget all that fun you had before. Just remember that was before.
Yeah. So, okay. So, here's one on a disclosure, and then he acted out, and now wondering about a second disclosure and a polygraph, but the addict is saying, you know everything. So, but to her point, it's difficult to trust.
Okay, so here, I'll take this one on, I think. I'm chasing the sun. I'm trying to...
I know. It's like...
Next time I'll put something up on that little spot there. So here's the most important thing about a slip after disclosure, that you know about it. If your husband told you, or boyfriend, whatever it is, if he said, I had a slip, it was on this day, this is what happened. I hope that you as a partner can feel some small sense of encouragement that while you may not be getting the husband you wanted, the one who never acts out again and never does any of that stuff, you may be getting at least the husband who's being honest with you. So that's one side, okay? That is one side. I'm going to give you another one. But one side is that if your husband wanted to act out and not tell you, he would have. And so if he did act out and he did tell you, I don't know, there's something there that I would want to give him some credit for in terms of not necessarily thinking there's more. Because my hope would be that if he's telling you, then he'll tell you about more. You know, that's that part. I don't know you, I don't know your husband. Here's the other side. A polygraph every 6 months never hurt a sex addict in a relationship, ever. There's nothing wrong with setting up that every 6-month polygraphy group meeting and saying, you know, there's nothing new to report, and whoops, I passed. And so, you know, I don't know how much betrayal you've experienced. There are spouses who've been told that's all there is, and then 6 months later, that's all there is, and 6 months later, there's a little bit more, and if you've been through that nightmare enough times, I completely understand that you do not want to go through that again. And even though he's told you, the fact that he did it is enough information for you to think, well, if he did that, maybe there's more, and I want a polygraph. Do what you need to do to find your peace in the relationship. If your husband is slipping and struggling, he understands, and he should shut up and say, yeah, you know what? If you want me to take a polygraph and you're not feeling trusting of me, honey, whatever you need, I'm glad to do. He should be grateful that you are staying with him. So having a slip and telling your spouse might have consequences. So I hope you hear both sides. On one side, I'm like, well, it's good to trust him, and he's starting to tell you stuff, and that's good, and you want to encourage the trusting. And on the other side, addicts lie. He had a slip. You don't trust him. If you have a history of him lying to you, get a polygraph. But maybe make it a part of a yearly scheduled routine. And it's absolutely true that addicts who get polygraphs act out less. No question about it. Because if I'm sitting around in February wanting to act out and going to go, I know in my head that in March or in June, I'm going to have to go to get that polygraph. And I know that polygraph is not going to forget that it was a few months ago. So, you know, there's nothing wrong with doing that. If you want to do it, it just costs money and it's kind of embarrassing. But, you know, do what brings you closer to your relationship. And dude, if you cheated on your wife and you had a slip, you know, there's consequences. And if you got to take another polygraph, keep your mouth shut and take it.
Okay.
But do it with a therapist.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So this one is, my husband used to be a sex addict, even though back then I had no clue what that was. Years later, I now understand it to be addiction. He has never done any recovery, but for the past 8 years, we have not had sex, and he says he cannot get an erection now. Is that possibly true, or am I still living in a bubble?
Wow. Well,
I know.
Again, I don't know how old you are or how long you've been in a relationship. I would bring this discussion back to, do you feel safe in your relationship? Do you feel like your needs are getting met emotionally, spiritually, sexually, romantically? Do you feel like this man is being honest with you and fair, I guess? I would want sex in my relationship. Just maybe not all the time, but I'd like some. And so 8 years of not being sexual is something that you might even want to go see a therapist about, because there's a process. There actually is a process to reigniting sexuality. And take it from a sexologist. We train about how to deal with couples that haven't had sex in 6 years or 8 years, and how to get them back started on the road of being intimate and sexual. So, whether I think the question may be more, what kind of relationship do you want to have with him? If you want to be more sexual with him, you probably need to go see a sexologist and figure out your sex life. I will say this though, no one stops being a sex addict. I was a sex addict 5 years ago. I was a sex addict 15 years ago. If I make it, I'll be a sex addict 5 years from now. I don't not necessarily have to act on that, but the emotional brokenness inside of me that drove me to that behavior is still there. So, whoops, I'm trying to get rid of this. Okay, working on it. Okay, so in any case, I'm not, that's a lot of questions all wrapped up in one. And the only thing I really say is I would get the two of you in front of a therapist and sit down and talk about the last 8 years, talk about what he did before. I mean, get it all on the table and find out what's going on now, because I'm not really sure that you're clear. And, people who can't get erections, who don't have heart conditions, can buy Viagra. So he can get plenty of erections if he wants them. So what's really, and by the way, even those people who can't take those pills, there are many ways to get erections. They can use injections into your penis. There are all kinds of things that will get you an erection if you really want one. So why is your husband not doing everything he can to be able to be sexual with you, would be my question. And why is it okay with you that you haven't had sex in 8 years? Those questions are equally as important to me as is he with someone else? And all of it needs to be put on the table. That's a lot of stuff. That's not going to get resolved in a little bit of time.
Agree. Okay. How does the couple address the sex addict's ongoing minimization of the trauma and pain that they have caused their partner? The addict continues to demonstrate lack of empathy and compassion.
Well, I like that question, Tammy, because I wrote a book for that man.
I know.
I wrote a book. By the way, let me answer the question. I wrote a book called Out of the Doghouse, a step-by-step relationship-saving guide for men caught cheating. And the reason I wrote the book is because men who cheat, and sex addicts in particular.
Here's the book.
Right, thank you. Thanks, Tammy. I wrote it in particular because men who cheat and men who are sex addicts in particular often have no idea how to heal the problem. And part of the challenge for us, let me give you your husband's scenario, is that he's working really hard. He's doing really good. Hopefully, he's going to some meetings. He's got a sponsor. He's in therapy. He's writing. He's working on himself. He's being honest with you, and he feels like he's doing a good job. He hasn't had sex with a stranger. It's been 6 weeks or 6 months. He feels like he's really doing great. You're looking at him like, okay, you're feeling good about yourself because you haven't had sex with a stranger in 6 months, but I've been married with you for 11 years and you had sex with strangers for 10 of them. So don't expect to see my face happy for a long time. I understand that. Here's the deal. He does need someone to be happy for him and celebrate the work that he's doing, but it probably isn't going to be you, nor should it be you. This is where your husband needs to get his needs met with people in his program, people in his groups, this is why we don't recover well alone. And you guys don't trust each other. So it's much too soon to really, and trust has to be rebuilt. So, Tammy, did I answer the question? I'm sorry, I may be a little spacey if I skipped a part there.
No, it was, how do you, I was thinking too, part of it could be, and I don't know, but if the SA has some shame and wants to not have to deal with that, so then you should just get beyond it. So I think a lot of it is just rebuilding the trust. So
I think it's simple as pie. Nobody wants to walk home to an angry face every night. Nobody wants to put in a hard day's work and come home to, fine, you're home, but you have every right to be that person. It's just he's going to have to put up with it. So, the answer is you get to have your feelings. You need to express them. You need to be where you're at. You need to get your needs met for comfort, support, and nurturing from friends and family and support, because he can't really give that to you because you don't trust him. And he needs to know that behavior has consequences. So here's a note for all the addicts and partners in the room. How long does it take for a partner to begin to really heal, to begin to feel trusting again, loving again, open again to a husband or male who has cheated on her, if they've been in a long-term relationship? How long do you think? And the answer is much, much longer than the guy would like it to be. Meaning, it's not unusual for a spouse to be hurting, angry, feeling betrayed, and on a bit of a roller coaster for up to a year. And I imagine that during that year, toward the 9-month turn, there are more good times and more pleasant times, but they're going to be interspersed with an angry face because something reminded you of it, or he didn't come home on time, or whatever it is. It can take a year or more for, I think, maybe a year and a half, for there not to be a lot of friction in the relationship. And that's provided that the person who did the acting out is being honest, showing up on time. Part of what I say to couples when sex addiction has been uncovered is that the sex addict is now one down in the relationship. You have to, if you're the sex addict, you have to do things that you didn't have to do before. You got to bring the groceries home. You got to show up on time. You got to come to dinner when you're called. You got to help out over the week, because now you don't have any wiggle room for being, oh, I'm a good guy, but I'll get to that later. You're not a good guy. You've hurt your partner. And now you have to prove yourself, and that's a right word, prove yourself worthy of the relationship. And it's not hard. You don't have to like build a mountain or come up with $1 million. All you have to do is be a good husband. Show up for the things you're supposed to show up for. Be kind, be nice, be patient, tolerate your partner's anger and disappointment, and eventually it will start getting better. But 9 times out of 10, my experience, it's someone who's really hurt somebody, who wants them to not be so hurt for so long. And you're going to be hurt for as long as you're feeling hurt. Nobody should take that away from you.
So the next question kind of ties in with that. It's this person is wanting to show, how do I show her my tremendous growth and change? It's been 6 months. And they apparently, boyfriend, girlfriend, separated, and now she just wants to be friends. She says she trusts them again. So.
Okay. That's complicated. Because did I get this right, Tammy? Just nod your head. I heard a guy writing into us saying that he cheated on a girl that he dated, or a woman that he dated, and that she's basically broke up with him, and now she's willing to be friendly and nice, but she's not interested in a relationship.
Yes.
But I have this feeling that the guy who's writing this wants to be more than friends. Here's my thought for you. I think that you have some grieving to do. If a woman tells you that she cares about you and she forgives you, but she doesn't want to be in an intimate relationship with you, it means, guess what? It means she cares about you and she forgives you and she does not want to be in a relationship with you. And that is something you're going to have to grieve and accept. It sounds like, and I don't know if this is true or not, but what I'm hearing from this message is, well, now that I'm sober and I'm really working on myself and she's forgiven me, now we can start dating, going out, being romantic, being sexual. I don't think that's happening, dude. And that may be the consequence of your behavior. Hopefully you found recovery, and that's what you get to exchange for the loss of this relationship, is the rest of your life you get to live in recovery, and she'll still even be a friend of yours. How cool is that? But do not push a woman into wanting to be romantic or sexual with you when you've hurt her and you expect that she should come around or something, because that's just plain abusive. We have time maybe for one more?
Oh, we've got some really good ones. I don't know. I know it does. So, all right. So let's pick one. You can see them too. I'm kind of wondering about the next to last one.
I'm not looking.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna do this one, and I'm gonna try to answer the rest of them by typing the answers. And
well, actually, I have a better. Actually, Tammy, rather than that,
yeah,
if you don't mind, and I didn't really properly introduce Tammy. So this is Tammy Verhelst. Tammy is the director of relationship development for all of our websites and all of our work, all of my work. And what she does is, if you write a note, she's going to get the note. So what I would rather, Tammy, than you spend your evening after not even having dinner answering people's questions, let them write you their questions. If you go to Sex and Relationship Healing and click on Contact Me, you can write a question to Tammy and she will get it. If you want me to get a question, you can write Rob at sexandrelationshiphealing.com. Sorry, I got that wrong, didn't I? So,
it's okay. It works.
Okay, but anyway, on sexandrelationshiphealing.com, Tammy is your Contact Me. On sexandrelationshiphealing.com, Rob at sexandrelationshiphealing.com. That's me. So, and Tammy's putting other ways to reach her. But I would rather you guys, Tammy, I don't really want you to spend your evening answering people's questions. Let them write you, and we will write back or send them referrals. We're here to help you find a therapist, help you find a treatment center, we'll do whatever help you find a book, help you find a group. We are the, whatever you need, we're going to try to supply it website. But if you don't go to Sex and Relationship Healing, you don't get the latest. So we appreciate that. Any more?
Okay, so I'm going to finish on this question because you said you'd do one more.
I did.
So I am an addict that disclosed and have been sober for the past 4 months. Whenever there is an issue, non-sex addiction specifically related, that comes up, she breaks up with me. On average, it's every 2 weeks, and we go into crisis mode and get back together. So they're kind of in this dance of crisis, break up, get back together.
Well, hold on, I made a mistake and I read another question. So now I got to answer the other question for you, and then I'll answer that question.
Okay.
Someone wants a sex therapist. So
I can help you with that. So
yeah, and I would suggest go to Dr. Clark and see if there's anyone there, or anyway.
Yeah.
So this question, now I'm looking for the one.
Now it's third from the bottom right now.
I'm a sex addict. I've been sober for 4 months.
Mm-hmm, that one.
Oh, I see. She breaks up with me. I understand. Okay. I don't know you, obviously, but here's a thought for you. I have a feeling that maybe your girlfriend or the woman you're involved with doesn't have a therapist or doesn't have someone who is on her side to talk to about this. And the reason I say that is because leaving you or running out the door every time this issue comes up is understandable because she's emotionally devastated, but that isn't the best, unhealthiest solution for her. She should have people to call, to write, to reach out to. So what I would suggest actually very strongly is, why don't you write Tammy or have your girlfriend write Tammy? And we will, as we work on getting a group together, because we're going to have free drop-in groups here, we'll get a hold of her and we'll let her drop in and she can sit in with other women. I think if she could have someone to call and say, he's driving me crazy today, I just want to leave him, rather than actually leaving you, that would probably help you guys grow your relationship faster. But I do want to say something to you really quickly before I go. How do you feel about someone who walks out on you? I don't know that would be okay with me. In other words, in my life, no matter what kind of mistakes I've made, if you want to be with me and I'm working on myself, then how long are you here for? Is it a year, 6 months, and then we'll look at it again? In other words, maybe the two of you might sit down together and say, look, I can't deal with this leaving and going, and you're not going to grow as a couple with all of that drama. So set a guideline. We will stay together for the next 6 months, no matter what happens, as long as there's no physical abuse, as long as you're not sexually acting out. And then she would have to hold her feet to the fire with her anger and her hurt and her disappointment with you, and either bring it to you or bring it to a good friend. But this sounds like a little bit of a cycle, and I'm not sure it's going to end well. In fact, I would guarantee it's not. Better for you to put a stop to that craziness now and see if you can get yourselves into a more stable pattern of relating, because what you're describing is going to explode. Yeah.
Okay, it's 6:59.
Let's take one more question. Come on, we're supposed to be daring.
Okay, all right. Well, you're looking at them. What do you want to?
Oh, I'll look. Okay, let's see.
How about the first one?
The first one.
Yeah.
Would seeing a sex therapist help achieve sexual intimacy? Okay, absolutely. This is a question about trauma. This is a woman writing in about her husband doesn't feel comfortable touching her in certain places or touching her in certain ways. This is what sexology is for. So drop Tammy a note, or Tammy, write those folks. ASEC can help them. Carol can help them. There's a whole field. Okay, so let me just tell you guys this, you 33 people, before I go, and before it gets dark in this room, apparently. Master's and PhD level therapists, here's a little dirty secret. We are not trained in human sexuality. As much as I wish we were, I was just in a room with 300 therapists who treat sexual trauma. And I said to them, how many of you have been trained in human sexuality? And none of them raised their hands. So if you're really dealing with issues that involve, I don't feel comfortable being touched there, I don't want you to touch me there, I have trouble initiating, when there are issues that come down to the act of sexuality, go see somebody who's a professional in that arena, and we can help you find those people. Going to seeing a regular therapist if you have an addiction problem or a sex problem is not going to help you. It's like seeing your GP when you have cancer. They're just going to need to refer you out. And with that, I will say thank you, Tammy, so much. I know you're going to make sure all these people's needs get met. Folks,
I'm going to do my best.
Every week on sex and relationship healing, every week at 6 o'clock on Monday night, and I'm in the rooms every week at 6 o'clock on Friday night. And I really hope you keep joining us, because this community, once we start talking to each other, which is the next step, not just talking to me, but talking to each other, that's when we're really going to start happening. Thanks, Tammy, for the support.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. See you next week.
Bye now.